Hello everyone, welcome to Anvil's live stream. My name is Ryan, I'm a developer advocate for Anvil, and today we're going to be building a feedback form from scratch using the Anvil platform. To start with, Anvil is a web app, is a platform to build web apps with nothing but Python. That's all the way from the front end, back end, all in one language. We're going to we're going to start with. I'm going to start with just going through an agenda with you. So first of all, what we're building. Like I say, we're going to build a really nice feedback form app. Nice general request. If you had a product or a service where you needed feedback, you could build this kind of app. It's going to have a user interface where people can enter their name, email, and some feedback. It'll send us an email to let us know that there's some feedback that's been submitted, and it's going to store that feedback for us in a database. We're going to go over some prerequisites, then we're going to go into the objectives, what you can walk away from this live stream today, hopefully knowing. Lesson plan, so the lesson plan is we're going to start with the user interface, so where people enter the data. Then we're going to create a database table for where people are storing that data. We're going to write some server-side code to add data to the data table, write some client-side code. Then we're going to add emails to the app and get it to send emails to us ourselves. And then we're going to deploy the app to the web. Finally, after that, we're going to have a little Q&A session if there are any questions from the live stream or from our forum. So, to start with prerequisites, you don't need any experience with Anvil to join this live stream or follow along. This is a beginner tutorial. You will need to know a little bit of Python. We have some details in the description of this live stream, some resources if you do want to get up to speed with that, and then come back to this. This will be posted as a video at a later date. So we'll be able to walk away from today. You'll be able to create a UI with Anvil using its drag and drop editor, create a data table and be able to add records to that data table, so we'll be able to add feedback and store it for a later date. Write some basic server-side code to add records to the data table, write some client-side code, add event handlers to our app. So event handlers are something where if somebody clicks a button in the UI, what then happens from that? So that's an event handler. We're going to add a notification just to let the user of our feedback form know that they've submitted some feedback and it's been submitted successfully. Then we're going to send an email to ourselves, and then we're going to deploy our app to the web. So let's start with the finished product just to see where we're aiming to get to. So this will be the finished app. We're going to rebuild this. We'll be able to add our name, a nice test email address, and then some feedback. Then we're going to be able to click that. And like I say, it'll give us a nice notification and send that data off. So to get started, go to anvil.works, go to our website. You can click on Start Building, which will take you to, if you haven't already got an account, it will take you to our login page. Accounts are free. You can do everything in this tutorial with a free user account. Then we're going to start by creating a new blank app. So if we click in here, we get some basic designs, but we're going to select the material design. And then that'll load for us. That'll load the Anvil IDE. So what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, we've got our menu. This documents all the modules and services of our app. This includes, we've got a client-side code, server-side code, and any services that we've added in. So this will be things like data tables and users and email services, things that we'll get into a little bit later. First thing I'm going to do with this new app is I am going to rename it. So let's just call this feedback form. I'll just name this one for the live stream. Rename that there. And what we're going to start by doing is adding components into our app. So start building it up. On the right-hand side, we've got our toolbox. This gives you the options of all the components we can add. This can be anything from like really simple kind of text labels all the way up to Google Maps and YouTube videos. We're going to start by adding in a card component. The card component is just going to act as a nice container for all the other components we're about to add. So we'll add our card. Then we're going to drag and drop in, I'm going to start with a title. So drag and drop in a label. I'm just going to rename this component to title. In the properties of the right hand side, so what this does is this is where we can, every component has a properties section that you can then edit to change the component to look and feel how you want it to. So let's just give ourselves a title, which is going to be feedback form. We've changed the text. In the appearance, we have the option of roles. Anvil comes with some nice default roles straight out of the box. So I'm going to select headline. For the more advanced people, you can go into the CSS and really start playing around with roles in the bottom left-hand side. There's plenty of information in our docs if you do want to go and do that. But for today, we're just going to use the out-of-the-box stuff. So we've got our label, change that to headline. That's the first bit. Next, we're going to create another label for our name. So we want to create an input prompt for the name of the person submitting the feedback. So I'm going to rename this to name, change the text of it to name. And then again, I'm going to change the role. We've got a nice one for input prompt, which just lines it up nicely with the next thing we're going to add, which is going to be our text box. I forgot to say at the beginning of this, if anyone has any questions, please let us know in the live chat and we can answer those as we go. We've got our name text box. This is going to be the input where we can type our name. So let's just change this to name text box. You can do things like add placeholder text, things like that. For this, I'm going to keep it nice and simple and just leave that as a blank text box. Then again, I'm going to drag and drop one for my email. So email label and text here. And again, change that role to input prompt. Yes, there we go. Then we need a text box for their email. So what we're doing here, when we're renaming these components, this will become more relevant a little bit later when we start looking at the client code, because it helps us identify them and write code for them. Again, I'm going to leave this blank. And then the last part of our feedback form, the last input prompt we need is the feedback itself. So there's feedback. Feedback label, should we call that? And then again with the text, I'm just going to prompt the users for their feedback. Change this to input prompt. Slightly different, instead of just having a standard text box, we're going to drag and drop in a text area. We want to give the users plenty of space. I'm going to drag that out a little bit. And then the last thing we're going to do for our user interface is drag in a submit button. So the top right hand side, drag in that button. I'm going to rename this again to submit button. Change the text to just a nice big submit. And again, I'm going to change my role. I'm going to give this a nice primary color so it stands out in a nice blue. And that's it. So we drag and dropped all the components we need for our UI. If we click run, we can have a nice preview of exactly how this app's going to use, and we can interact with these components. So I can add a name, add an email, and then add some feedback. And we've got some nice text boxes and a nice submit button. That's all well and good. We've got a UI, but at the moment it's not really doing anything. The next thing we'd really like it to do is actually start storing some of this information. So when a user clicks submit, it's going to stay there for us to have a look at a later date. So we've got the UI. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start adding in a place to store that data. So we're going to come to the services on the left-hand side, click the little cross, and then add in data tables. Once we've added our data tables, I'm going to add a table in here. So anyone that's familiar with databases, this will be very familiar for you. Yeah, I'm going to add a table. I'm going to call that feedback. And then I'm going to add a column for each field that we've added onto our UI. So name, a place to store each one. So name, email, feedback, and then finally, I'm not going to add a text column. I'm just going to delete that, so we don't need that. The last thing I'm going to add is a created date time column, so that we can see when this feedback was submitted. So I've added that as a date time. As you can see, when you add columns, you've got a number of options for the kind of data that you can store in data tables. For this one, like I say, it's quite a simple app, so it's just going to be texts in that date time object. So that's it. We've got a place to start storing that information. Now we've got our UI. We've got some a place for people to enter the information. We've got a place for people to store the information. We need to build that bit in between. So the first bit we're going to build is the server code, which is going to add the data to this data table. So if we come onto the left-hand side again, click this little cross, and then we can add a server module here. This is a full Python environment, so you can write Python. You can start importing packages. We do have a full list of packages on our website. Again, it should be in the description of this live stream for all the packages you can import. For this, I'm going to import the datetime module for that created column that we just added. So from datetime, import datetime. And then I'm going to start by defining an add feedback function. So this function is going to add a record for us. I'm going to start with the decorator, which is the anvil.server.callable decorator. What this does is just makes it available for our client to call this function. You'll see this crop up in a second. I'm going to define our function. I'm going to call this add feedback. And then I am going to give it some parameters, one for the name, another for email, and then the feedback itself. With that function defined, I'm going to add a row to the add table for each piece of feedback that's added. So if I type app tables, the Anvil autocomplete is really useful, so it will pick up the fact that I've added that feedback table already. So I can type app tables.feedback to pick that up, and then I'm going to call the add row function. Again, with add row, it's already picked up the columns that we added earlier, so it's picked up the name, feedback, email. Let's start with the name. I'm going to set that to be the name parameter. Same with email, just nice and simple, email parameter, feedback to feedback parameter. And then finally, created. Created, we're going to do something a little bit different. So what we're going to call is we're just going to call datetime. We're going to call the now function as part of the datetime module, which will pick up the exact time this function's run. Let's just going to format this to make it look a bit nicer. And there we have it. Now we have a function that we can call from our client side that will add a record to the data table. So let's go to our client side. If we click back on our form, we should be able to see the UI that we built earlier. As I say, at the moment, that's not really doing much. So what we want it to be able to do is when this button is clicked, it takes the text that the user's entered into here and then passes it as an argument to that server function we've just written, and then it writes it to the app table. If we go into the code pane, then we are going to define, sorry, actually, if we come into design, we can click on the submit button. Now, one of the really cool things that Anvil does is it can handle events for you out of the box. So when somebody clicks this, what we can do is we can click on this arrow here, and it will create a function that's fired every time this button is clicked. So it defines the function for us. We can start adding, so what we need to do now is call the function we created in the server, this add feedback. We want to call that from the client side. So what we can do is anvil.server.call, and then in that, again, the autocomplete's already picked up our server function that adds the feedback. Add that. Add a nice comma, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass it some of the variables. Let's create those variables. So I'm going to create a variable for the name. I'm going to pick that up from the component itself, so that name text box that we added earlier. If we go self.name name text box.text, that's the name parameter. Any text that's entered by the user will be picked up by that and set to that variable. I'm going to do the same for email. Text. And then same for the feedback box. Just create a nice function for that, a nice variable for that, sorry. I'll tell you what I've done. I have not named this feedback area, so let's just come back here. So when I was creating this earlier, I just didn't name this properly. Feedback. Let's just call that feedback text box. And come back into our code, and then we can be able to pick that up properly. So see self.feedback textbox.text. So now we've got the variables that we can pass our server function. So then name, email, and feedback. So I've got a couple of questions from Kevin. It's up to you. I mean, you generally wouldn't pass the whole object. I would usually just pass the text parameter, and that's all that you need to pass at this point. So yeah, you can pass entire objects back to from client to server, so it is up to you, but in this case it's just like a really simple just the text property. I'm just going to send the text back. Once that once we've called that function, that's going to call the server function for us and then add the data to our data table. So if we run that, I'm just going to test this quickly. So if I just put my name, test@email.com, that really matters, and then so once we click the submit button, it's going to call that client function we just added, and then although it doesn't give us much feedback, it doesn't give us as a user much information that's been submitted, we can, if we stop that, take a look at our data tables, we can see that that's now been added. So that's great. That's now working. That's the basic functionality of the app. As I say though, at the moment, when we've called that function, as the end user of this feedback form, we're not really getting much information back that feedback's actually been submitted. So what we're going to do now, we're going to just make this a little bit of a nicer app to use. We're going to add a notification. So notifications are really nice and simple, really nice and easy to add to Anvil apps. We can call the notification function, add some text for it. So I'm just going to go for feedback submitted. And then as it's in this function, I'm just going to call it to show it straight away. And then what that's going to give us as the user of this feedback form is a nice, just a nice show function. Sorry, it's going to show the notification for us to give us a little bit of feedback. Also, what I'd like to do is I'd like to clear the form as well, so that once you've submitted one piece of feedback, it clears the form, and then we can submit more feedback if we're really that eager about whatever this, really that eager to keep submitting feedback. So I'm just going to define a function called clear inputs. Don't need any arguments for this, and then all I'm going to do is set each one of our components, so self.name, or each one of our text boxes to empty strings. So text, set that to an empty string. Oh, sorry, yeah, actually, as its client form, just need to give it the self. So self, so we've got the name one. If we do the email text box text, their function self.feedback. What do we call that? Feedback. Yep, feedback text box. Again, I'm going to set that to clear. Now, if we click run, let's have a look what that notification looks like. Let's see what it looks like when this is cleared. So again, put my name in, test@email.com. Let's give myself some more. This is some more feedback. And then we click submit. You should get a nice notification. Oh, I tell you what we haven't done. We haven't actually called that function, the clear inputs function, when we click that submit button. So let's just add that in. So at the end of this submit, clear button, once we've submitted our information, once our notifications come back, we just need to call this clear inputs. So let's try that again. Let's try that again, see that it clears the text for us. This is even more feedback. And then we can click submit. Okay, so I've obviously missed something here. One of the nice things when you're running the app in the IDE, you get a nice output panel, like you would if, you get a nice output panel. Cannot set form attribute. Ah, right, okay, so I think I know what I've done here. If we click on, we can click on this error, and it will take us to where the code has gone wrong. Yeah, so I can see what I've tried to do here is set the whole component to an empty string, which is obviously not going to complain about. So if I just set that to text instead, give that another try. Third time lucky. This is some feedback. And now the form should clear for us. And there we have it. So we're getting a nice notification that the feedback's been submitted, and we're also getting a nice clean form for us to submit for further feedback. Again, just to make sure that it's going all the way through our data tables. There we have it. We can see all the times I've submitted it with a nice datetime object with the exact time that each one of those items has been submitted. Cool. So we have, what have we done so far? So we've created a UI with the drag and drop interface. We've created a data table to store our records. We've written a basic server-side function, so this add feedback function. We've written some client-side code which will handle what happens when a submit button is clicked, calling that server function and making sure it's stored in the information stored in the data tables. And we've added a nice little notification and cleared the text fields. So to take this app to just like one level above, we can add some email functionality. What I'd like it to do, ideally I don't want to be coming into this app every time somebody submits some feedback to check the data tables to make sure that I haven't received any more. So what it'd be quite cool is if it could send me an email to let me know that some feedback's come in. Anvil's got a really useful service called the email service. It lets you send and receive emails from the app. Oh, I've clicked on the wrong one. There we go. Lets you send and receive emails from the app. So if we come onto the left-hand side, click our plus button, it'll let you add the email service. it's got some information with some examples of what you can do. What we're going to do is we're going to come back into our server module. And then once this feedback has been added to our data tables, what I'm going to get it to do is send me an email. So I'm going to type anvil.email .send. Again, Anvil's autocomplete is really useful here, so it's going to tell us all the parameters that we can add to this. I'm going to keep it really nice and simple. I'm just going to send it to me. So I've got a dummy email address, which is feedback for Ryan at gmail.com. And then after that, I'm going to give my email some text. So what would I like my email to say? So what we're going to do, I'm going to have a multi-line string for this. Just keep that formatted. Multi-line string for our text. I'm going to use an F string, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build up the information that was entered into the feedback form. I'm just going to reproduce that in our email. So if we give it an F string, we can pass the parameters at the top of our function straight in to this string. So I'm going to start with you've had some feedback, and then let's give it pass through the name of the person that's giving the feedback, the email so that we can contact them based on this feedback, and then feedback itself. So much like our form. And there we go. So, it does help. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a subject as well, just so we know. Subject. You've got some feedback. Okay. There we go. So that is all we should need to add it to receive an email. So again, if I run this, I'm going to enter my name, test email address, feedback for you. Again, I'm going to click submit. Feedback submitted. And if we come into my inbox, it might take a second just to come through. Oh, that was quicker than I thought. And there we go. So this is the email coming straight from our app. You can see that it's pulled through the name of the person, the email, and the feedback. And there you have it. That's emails added to your app. One last thing to do then. So we've got our app. I'm fairly happy with that. I think that's everything I need our feedback form to do. So the last thing I want to do is just publish this to the web. Anvil apps are published by default. They come with a nice private link that you can share with people if you do want to share the beginnings of your app. All you need to do to publish it is come up to the top left-hand side here in the IDE, click on the gear icon, come down to publish app, and then you can share via a public link. It'll give us a default domain that's available to us, but I'm just going to call this feedback form live stream. Let's try that. Let us know. I don't want to add a custom. You can add a custom domain, but I'm not going to do that today. Then if I click on it, there we have it. So if anyone wants to browse to this app, I will put it in the comments. But there we have it. That app is live and ready to go. And you can start submitting some feedback. Okay, so does anyone have any questions before I move away from the IDE or the form we've just built? I'll just give it a second. No? Okay. If there are any questions leading on from this, let's just recap on what we've learned. So So let's just have a quick recap of what we've done. So we've covered the user interface, creating a user interface. We've created a data table to store our data. We've written a basic server-side function, which in the end added data to our data table and sent out an email for us using the email service. We wrote an event handler, so what happens when somebody clicks that submit button, where the code that's called when that submit button is clicked. We added a notification and cleared the form so the user can see that their feedback's been submitted successfully. We've sent emails out from our app, and finally we've deployed the app live to the web. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me for the live stream. If anyone has any questions, we do have a forum post, which I don't think got any questions in the end. But if anyone has any questions at the moment, please let me know. I'm happy to hang around for a few minutes. Just to add, this is going to be posted as a video to our YouTube account, so you can come back to this at any point if you do want to feedback through. I will take it. I'm going to wait another sort of 30 seconds, just in case there are any questions. Okay. In that case, thank you everyone for joining me. We look forward to any feedback you have on this, and hopefully it's been a nice. Here we go. Alan's got one. How would we add user login functionality? Yeah, great question. So, user functionality. No, it hasn't been covered. User functionality is really simple to add to Anvil apps. So anyone that's written web-based apps in the past will know that it's a bit of a minefield adding user authentication. Much like we did with the email service, to add user authentication, you come to our services. Oops, let me just share my correct screen. So coming back into the app, if you come over to the services on the left-hand side, we can add the user management service. There's a lot that goes into the user management service, but in its most basic form, what you can do is if you click on the add users, it comes with a really nice, just simple interface where you can add the kind of login screen that you want. There's a default login screen. So if you add your user service, copy this login with form to our client-side form. I'm going to do this for anyone that wants to, anyone that starts up this app will be asked to log in. So we add that Anvil login with form function, and then when we run our app, it gives us a nice login form straight out of the box. It comes with the full ability for people to sign up, enter passwords. So say I did want to sign up. Let's sign up with my feedback for Ryan email. Just demo this. Give it a quick password. There's nothing more boring than watching people log in, is there? Sign up. It comes with all the there's a lot to the user management service, so if you have any really specific questions, then I'm happy to answer them. But out of the box, it comes with a nice confirmation email, so this person, now they've signed up, gets a confirmation link, lets them know that they've signed up for that. User management also adds a data table to your app, so if we stop this now, we can take a look. If we have a look in our data tables, the user management service has added users for us, which handles all the password security. And within the user management service itself, there's a lot of options. So it comes with Google integration, Facebook. You can do things like email users sign-in links if they want to. If they don't want to sign up with passwords. You can configure the security, how secure the passwords are, how long people are remembered from login, so they don't have to log in every time they hit your app. You can save the login state for anywhere up to a year if you fancy it. One thing that we've added recently, which is really useful as well, is the two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication. So that is another added layer of security if you want it. What I'll do is I'll post in the description to this and on the forum post, I'll post some links to the documentation on login on the user service if that's of use to anyone. Any other questions? I hope I've explained that well enough. Okay. Yeah, in that case, again, I think I'm going to thank you very much, Al. We certainly like to think so. So I've just noticed Eli's question. So yes, Adro does come with protection against SQL injection. So that'll, nice layer of security there for you. Okay. I'm going to wait around just for another sort of 30 seconds. There's a bit of a delay on this stream, so if there are any more questions that come out of this, if not, as I said earlier, happy to answer any questions on the forum, and I will post further resources in the description to this video and on the forum itself. Great. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in, so in that case, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope this has been a useful run by. It's been good to actually do a live stream and be able to interact with people. So thank you all for your time. I hope that's been useful, and I look forward to your questions going forward. Thank you.